Hey, what's up, everybody? Tim Albrecht here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, where we feature questions from you, the YFP community, to be answered by one of YFP Planning's fee-only certified financial planners. Before we jump into today's question, I want to give a shout out to YFP Planning's incredible team that makes this segment possible. YFP Planning offers fee-only comprehensive financial planning services that are customized to the pharmacy professional. So whether you want to optimize your investing plan, pay off student loans, or simply build a solid financial plan, YFP Planning will help get your income working for you rather than the other way around. You can learn more by visiting yfpplanning.com. Again, that's yfpplanning.com. Okay, this week's question comes from Stephen in Sacramento, California.
Hello, YFP team. This is Stephen from Sacramento, California. I was wondering what your thoughts were about having a portion of your emergency funds in electronic U.S. Treasury Savings Bonds. I say a portion because I wouldn't want to put all of my emergency funds in something that I can't touch for 1 year. But the interest rates are much higher, currently 3.5%, than anything you can get in the market that is considered high interest. Even if you needed the money within the first 5 years and had to give up 3 months of interest, it still seems like the savings bonds could be advantageous, similar to how people used CD ladders in the past when interest rates were better. I've been a big fan of the show for many years and look forward to your response. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephen, for submitting your question to be featured on this week's Ask a YFP CFP segment of the YFP podcast. Tim Baker, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this question came up. We were looking at this a couple weeks ago, Tim, and I think to prep for the question, I actually went through the process of setting up and buying some Treasury Savings Bonds for myself. It was a little bit clunky, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad going through that. You can actually go on treasurydirect.gov and set up an account. It probably took me about 10 minutes to do so. And this is kind of more of a curiosity thing. And you can go in and buy the bonds. Now, the bonds that we're talking about, particularly with Stephen's question, is the Series I bonds, which sometimes can get confused with the double E bonds. But yeah, I'm typically the person that, kind of lives by the KISS, keep it simple, stupid. But I actually think that there is a potential place for this type of investment or cash-like savings, particularly for the emergency fund. Now, I still have questions, Tim, about the liquidity and kind of getting the money back into cash and into my kind of everyday checking account in case it hits the fan and I do need to access that money. But, going through it, I think, and kind of where the interest rate. So I think I did this at the end of October where the composite rate was 3.54%. Now, if you buy these, and it's kind of eye-popping, if you buy these Series I bonds between now and April 2022, it's actually 7.12%.
Wow.
So that's pretty amazing. So to kind of break that down, Tim, the interest rate for a Series I bond is actually, there's a fixed component, which right now is 0%, but then there's an inflation index component. So right now it's 7.12%. So because inflation has been so high, that's kind of why, these bonds are being issued. So it kind of follows, if anybody's familiar with the tips like the Treasury, where they're inflation protected bonds. So it kind of tracks with how inflation is. So it's very similar to that. But, to kind of get your composite rate, it's kind of reassessed, every 6 months. And then that is set based on your fixed rate and then the inflation rate. The nice thing about these bonds, Tim, is that they're safe. They're backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. So it can be something where I think it has a place in the emergency fund or even in a bond portfolio in general. I think the big drawback here is if you are currently, a listener out there that is currently building their emergency fund, I don't necessarily know if I would do it now. I think this is kind of like a deeper reserve, or kind of once you get set and you're looking for ways to kind of eke out a little bit more yield versus, hey, I'm just trying to, plow as much money into a high yield savings account, because you really can't touch this money for a year. So it's basically off limits for a year, Tim. So that what that means is if my target emergency fund is $20,000 and, I say I put half of that into a Series I bond today, I can't touch that until end of next year, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have an emergency that comes up, then that's problematic. Once you get past that first year, then between years 1 and 5, you basically forfeit 3 months of interest, which is actually very similar to kind of like what you see for CDs.
Yep.
So that's kind of where I'm at now, Tim, is I have a high yield savings account and then I have a CD, which is incrementally better. But if I needed to get to that deeper reserve CD, then I would basically, forfeit, the interest that I've collected. And I think it might be two months for a CD. I have to look that up. But then after 5 years for the Series I bond, there really is no penalty. So once you reach that holding period of 5 years, then you can kind of take out and redeem the bond as you'd like. So I think there is utility here. And I think one of the reasons that it's getting a lot of, people are actually looking at this is because where the interest rates are. And I think when we were looking at this last week, we were kind of shocked at the interest, at least the inflationary component was that high, even knowing that inflation has gone up here in recent months. So I think there is a place. I definitely think there is a place for it. I think some of the clunkiness and some of the, just to log onto your account, I have to like find my account number that's buried in my email, copy and paste that, and then to actually type in your password. You're basically clicking on the screen to type the letters in. It's just kind of weird.
I've never seen that.
I've never seen that either. And I feel like we've used a lot of things, a lot of technology that is very much, sensitive in terms of the data that we have. But it's interesting to say the least.
I too went through it, Tim, just to get a feel for this as we were looking at this question and agree. I mean, I think there's some clunkiness overall, nothing that you can't overcome if it's a good fit. We'll link to in the show notes to the treasurydirect.gov. It's really interesting to just learn about more if you're hearing some of this for the first time, both in how they're constructed, the combination of a fixed rate, stays for the same for the life of the bond, inflation rate that's set twice a year. There are some other considerations of taxes and how it can be used for education planning, depending on your adjusted gross income. So really interesting to learn about. We'll link to that in the show notes and appreciate your comment, Tim, about the role it may have as a deeper reserve. I think that's a good place and a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
This question, Tim, actually came from a webinar that we did earlier this year. And as you mentioned, the rates were drastically different than they are now, but good opportunity to remind the YFP community about the webinars that we have been doing throughout the year. We've got one left in 2021, key financial moves to make before 2022. You can find out more about that webinar and register yourfinancialpharmacist.com/webinar. And we're getting ready for launching what will be the topics coming forth in 2022. And you can visit that page as well for more information. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode of the Ask a YFP CFP segment of the Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast. If we feature your question on the show, we'll send you a super comfy YFP t-shirt. You can submit your question by sending an email to info@yourfinancialpharmacist.com, or you can record your question by visiting yourfinancialpharmacist.com/ask-YFP. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your name on the show, you can send or record your question anonymously. As we conclude this week's Ask a YFP CFP episode, an important reminder that the content in this podcast is provided to you for your informational purposes only and is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for investment or any other advice. Information in the podcast and corresponding materials should not be construed as a solicitation or offer to buy or sell any investment or related financial products. We urge listeners to consult with a financial advisor with respect to any investment. Furthermore, the information contained in our archived newsletters, blog posts, and podcasts is not updated and may not be accurate at the time you listen to it on this show. Opinions and analyses expressed herein are solely those of Your Financial Pharmacist, unless otherwise noted, and constitute judgments as of the dates published. Such information may contain forward-looking statements which are not intended to be guarantees of future events. Actual results could differ materially from those anticipated in the forward-looking statements. For more information, please visit yourfinancialpharmacist.com/disclaimer. Thank you for your support of the podcast and have a great rest of your week.